Shalom. I'd like to start out by giving all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakak Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the Great Millstone, and Shalom to the elect of Israel. This is Thamayim in Atlanta, and we're here on the brother's page, History and Herbs, and he has this post here from InfoWars. It says, breaking trade war escalation. China bans all rare earth mineral exports to the U.S. because Trump refuses to surrender and accept the Chinese century. And so we can see this trade war is heating up between China and America. And Trump placed all these tariffs onto the other nations, but primarily China, with the other nations capitulating or backing off, and Trump putting a 90-day cap on that. But China won't capitulate. They won't bend the knee to these tariffs, and they're posting their own embargoes and trade restrictions as well. And you see one with the banning of all rare earth mineral exports to the U.S. And so this is all heating up, and we know that trade wars precede real wars, and things are getting a little hotter. But that's not the point. I want to take a look at this term right here, the Chinese century. And so I took the liberty to go ahead to Wikipedia and find it. So this is the Chinese century. It says the Chinese century is a neologism suggesting that the 21st century may be geoeconomically or geopolitically dominated by the People's Republic of China. And let's get this word neologism real quick, just to give it a little more context. It says in linguistics, a neologism, also known as a coinage, is a newly formed word, term, or phrase that has achieved popular or institutional recognition and is becoming accepted into mainstream language. So a new word. I think logos goes into word. And so, and neo is new. So we got a new word here. So we might be seeing this term more and more often, the Chinese century, because they truly believe that they are up next. But we'll get into the scriptures to see what it says about that. Dominated by the People's Republic of China. It says similar to how the American century refers to the 20th century and the British century to the 19th century. The phrase is used particularly in association with the idea that the economy of China may overtake the economy of the United States to be the largest in the world. A similar term is China's rise or rise of China. And so the Chinese went ahead and coined a new phrase, the Chinese century, because they really believe that they're up next to rule within this world. They think they're going to have a Chinese hegemony over the earth to where they're going to dominate economically and politically. But the scriptures speak against that. The Chinese being the Moabites of the scriptures, and they really think that they have a shot coming up next, but they don't, because we've got the kingdom of heaven coming, the kingdom of Yahweh Shai, the kingdom of Israel. That is up next, because the Lord showed us prophetically what the empires that would rise and fall before the return of Yahweh Shai. And so we're here in Daniel 2. This is where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and Daniel interpreted this dream. And within this dream, he saw a giant statue. And it had a head of gold, chest of silver, and actually, we'll just read it from here. But Daniel 2 and verse 32 says, "This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass." Actually, let's start up 1 at 31. It says, "Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image," which is basically a big statue, "whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible." So here's the description. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. And so the interpretations a little further down. And we'll try to get to that, but the point being, this image's head was of fine gold. That was the Babylonian, the Syro-Babylonian Empire. His breast and his arms of silver. That was the Medo-Persian Empire. His belly and his thighs of brass. That was the Greeks. That was the Greek Empire. His legs of iron. And this is the fourth part, or the fourth beast, because in Daniel 7, it interprets them as beasts, but it's the same kingdoms rising and falling. But his legs of iron being Rome. This was the Roman Empire. And then his feet, part of iron and part of clay. And so you still see the remnants of Rome there with the iron. And this makes up NATO and EU. This is the reiteration of Rome that fell and then rose back again. This is the beast whose deadly wound was healed. And that's where we currently are. But once this falls, the kingdom of heaven starts. Verse 34, though, says, "Thou sawest till that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces." That stone's Yahushua, coming to put all rule, power, and authority underneath him. 35, it says, "Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth." Mountain being a government, and the kingdom of heaven, kingdom of Yahushua, is going to govern the entire earth and everyone within it, including these heathen whose kingdoms these were. And he's coming to completely lay waste to their kingdoms because they've ruled in wickedness, all of them. And there's not going to be nothing but, as it says in 2 Esdras 13, dust and smell of smoke, because he's going to utterly lay their armies waste. But let's keep reading, because it kind of breaks it down, just so you know I'm not just making stuff up. It says, "This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation, therefore, before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the power of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the heaven, hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold." And this was Nebuchadnezzar within the Assyro-Babylonian Empire, showing that is the head of gold. It says, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth." So the next one's the Medo-Persian Empire. That's the silver, and then the brass are the Greeks. It said, "And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron." And this is Rome. Rome ruled through their iron weaponry. It says, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. In this, both the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire were ruled by Edomites. Alexander the Greek was an Edomite. And it says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And that's where we are now. Because you have what you call the pigs nations: Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, Spain. These are known as your poor your economically poor countries within the EU. They're not always doing so well. But then the other nations are rich, but there's still division within them. It says, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. So there's schisms within these toes. And it says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay, because it's not completely together. They're always worried about who's paying more, who's paying less. They have all these different languages that they speak within Europe, and there's going to be division. And once Satan's kingdom is divided, which is already divided, and we're watching them vie for power, it's not going to be able to stand. They're not going to be able to continue on. And it says, and in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom. And so now, at the fall of NATO and EU, with America being that whore that rides the back of this beast, then Yahweh Shai will return. And it's going to come through war when World War III starts. So that's how China would presumably get power, is after World War III, but they didn't account for the return of Yahweh Shai, which that is foolish of them. It says, and in the days of these kings shall the Most High of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people. So this kingdom's going to go on forever and ever, and it won't be left to other people. So what is all this nonsense of everybody can be saved? This is a kingdom for the Israelites, just as the other nations had their own kingdoms and their own dynasties. China's already had their dynasty period. The Edomites are at the end of their dynasty period, or their period of rulership, or their temporary rulership, their blessing from the Lord. They're at the end of it. The other nations have had their opportunities. Time and chance happeneth to all men. And so what are these Moabites speaking on? They are not next. There won't be a Chinese century. It says, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. All these kingdoms, all these different nations will bend the knee to Yahweh Shai, and they're also going to be broken like the potter's vessels. So we're going to rule over them we're going to rule over them with rigor, because they're going to have to be put under the law, statutes, and commandments, and it's going to be hard for them. Especially think about the Moabites, the Chinese. We're going to have to tell them to not eat dogs countless times, and they're going to have to catch a lot of bruises and spill a lot of blood over them not obeying the dietary laws, as well as the other laws within the scriptures. All of these nations are going to have a hard time adjusting to the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, but it will happen. And the earth will be better off for it, as well as in the kingdom. They're going to be treated fairly once they've served out their 1,000 years of captivity, but they're going to have to go through this breaking in period. Psalms 2, because they should not be considering ruling next. The scriptures let you know this is just the time of the Gentiles, and Jerusalem has been trodden. Let's go to that, because that's exactly what this is, and they're going to have to pay for what they've done. Luke 21 and verse 24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword. This is the Israelites that are being spoke of, the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. But here at 70 AD, it was primarily Southern Kingdom, which are the so-called Negroes. And it says, and shall be led away captive into all nations. When did this happen? To the people that are claiming to be the people of the Lord. When did they get led away captive into all nations? Not just one nation, into all nations. You know, the diaspora. When did that happen to you guys? It never happened. Stop lying. It says, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles. Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. And so the people were trodden down of the Gentiles, the other nations, those being outside of the temple. And the land itself is currently being trodden down of the Gentiles. The Ishmaelites are there, the Hamites are there, and most of all, Amalek is there, claiming to be the Lord's people and waging war on everybody. It's being trodden down of the Gentiles. Those are Gentiles, those aren't the chosen. It says, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And World War III marks the end of the times of the Gentiles. And it's being fulfilled now. We're watching the downfall of the beast, the downfall of the Edomites who run the beast. The Edomites run those toes of miry clay and iron. And they're coming to the end of the rulership. Let's go back to Psalms though, because we're still got to get on Moab, because Moab is thinking foolishly. This is Psalms 2 and 1. Why do the heathen rage? Those Moabites are heathen. The Edomites are heathen. The Ishmaelites are heathen. Everyone outside of the nation of Israel are heathen. I will say, we have been scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, just like we saw in Luke 21. It said, and shall serve all the nations, the diaspora. We have been scattered all around. So our seed is left in these different nations, and we are going to come back looking like the other nations. But if you're outside of that seed line through your father, you are a heathen, and there's nothing you can do to change it. It says, why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? And so the heathen, these Moabites, are imagining the Chinese century. That's not going to happen. That's a vain thing. And they're raging. They're going to war about this stuff. They're engaging in trade and tariff wars, and will eventually get into a kinetic war, a physical war. It says the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying that, so these kings of the earth have actually all colluded together. You've got Psalms 83, where it speaks about how they tried to remove the name of Israel. And now there's becoming division amongst them, because they're all vying for power after the fall of Edom, which everybody could see that Edom is falling. But none of them are going to be next. It's going to be Yahushua. It's going to be the Israelites. It says, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. So let us put away these prophecies that are saying that Israel's next. No. China is next. No. China is not next. You're heathen. Why are you imagining a vain thing? It says, he that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision. The Lord's going to laugh at you trying to get there. He's going to cast you down. He speaks of your demise in 2nd Esdras 15. Woe to thee, Babylon. Woe to thee, Asia. This means destruction. You're about to be destroyed, and your people are about to be in chains, and you're going into slavery head first. You'll actually come out on the other end, though, unlike your buddies, the Edomites. It says, then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Because what is coming on the earth is going to be greater than any other time of all time. And then we're going to have nuclear war. There's going to be nukes flying around the earth and destroying things. So yes, it says, yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord has said unto me, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. So the Lord's going to set up Yahushua to rule over Israel and to rule over the world. And this will actually put the earth and the world into order. The heathen can't bring order. They don't understand order. He says, ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. So Moab, you and your new Chinese century, that's just a vain thing. He's letting you know you guys are going into captivity. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance. It's like a wedding present, a wedding gift that the Lord is going to give to Yahushua when he marries his bride Israel. You're the gift. You're a possession. You're going to be a possession. It says, in the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. You're going to be right there with the land, being possessed and being worked. You're going to build up the kingdom of Israel, and you're going to learn the law, statutes, and commandments. It says, thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, so rule over them with rigor. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. And this can be speaking to both the Israelites, because we're kings and priests of the earth, but also to these kings of these heathens. But they've already done everything. They've touched the apple of the Lord's eye. They weren't wise, and so their judgment is coming. They're about to be a possession. And they will be a possession. And so there's no such thing as a Chinese century. They just made up a term and are pushing it to try to get power after the fall of America, but it's not going to happen. The Lord's going to set up his holy mountain with his king on it, with Yahushua on it, and King David right underneath, then the 12, and so on and so forth, and the 144. They are not up next. And so, Lord willing, that was edifying. I'd like to give all glory, praise, and honor to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakak, Wadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of the great millstone. Shalom to the elect of Israel. Shalom.